Okay, fabulous people. Another day in hell, heaven, heaven, hell, duality, earth. Welcome. Here we go. What we got today? Well, what we got is standardly, within the standardalities of things, we could ask, without having jump ahead energy, what is human design really promising us? If it is even promising us anything at all. It's a tool that we get to fall into some type of resonance alignment with, and we get to practice a process with to do something where we don't use our toxic mind. We brush away our toxic mind. We brush away our society mind. We brush away the nearby influence minds, the miscellaneous minds that influence our not self mind. Our not self mind is receiving nearby influences of the society, the quote unquote detrimental society mind, untrue shit. Nearby influences of your like neighbors and families, their entanglings with just general society and how they have you know not self mind, not self mind being just things that are just built from conditioning and untrueness. And then those influences of those minds, it could create toxic influences of thoughts. And those toxic influences of thoughts, they could inhabit your mind, because your current level of what your mind is, it's a process of potentially purging out toxic programs. And toxic programs not just being like physical, but mental and psychological and even spiritual, respectively. So it's like, what is human design really doing, respectively? Or what could human design be doing? That's the first thing I should have asked, because obviously, like, sometimes I'll think of like a couple things at the same time. So the first thing I should have asked here is like, what is human design doing? It's a process that's allowing us to shed away the accumulation of the toxic mind that we have, the society toxic mind that we have, and the nearby influencing miscellaneous minds that carry general untruthness. So if human design was a thing to like be grounded and anchored more or less into the earth, what could it possibly be like, really like delineating? What lines in the sand is that drawing for like humanity? Because it's claiming it's a system of synthesis. So if it's claiming it's a system of synthesis, and there's all these like different myriads and contexts of toxic minds that are saying they have something of a synthesis, but that's not necessarily true, and human design is more so that, then you could see the delineation of just the untruth and the truth within the individual, within just basic community dynamics, neutrally seeing it, and just like the states, the countries, and and then global connections at large generally. So what I'm really trying to bring home is like, there's different types of yin and yang dynamics. All the planets, they could oppose each other uniquely in their own metaphorical once in a blue moon. But like, we could say that, the sun and Saturn has a very particular yin and yang dynamic. Because what is the sun? The sun is simultaneously truth and untruth, because it's just consciousness energy. It's the spiritual fire that's inhabited and inserted in the flesh body, or something of like a flesh template already doing that. So the sun is so we're all like, it's like this light conscious energy. It's programmable. The sun is in between Saturn and feminine consciousness, because feminine consciousness is the bearer of the sun, and the bearer of the sun within the feminine consciousness, eventually that created Saturn. And like a couple months ago, when I was just mobbing around in where I mob around. Like I walk, sometimes I walk and I do underground podcasts, and I explain that tidbit, what I just said, of like how that process was even more, have a more in-depth explanation, you know? So within that, there's unique yin and yang dynamics between the planets, but particularly the sun and Saturn have a particular yin and yang dynamic, because Saturn is something more of a consolidation of light consciousness energy, and not like light in like a superficial way, light in a more spiritual way, because there's different, like, you know, you could have different definitions of light. But like particularly this yin and yang dynamic that I'm speaking of, the sun and Saturn, there's a particular yin and yang dynamic, like a precise yin and yang dynamic there, because on a surface, on like its own surface level front, they have like they have a prolific yin and yang dynamic. They're kind of like associated with each other. The sun is more something of like something that's kind of like more it's free flowing energy that we all have, and the Saturn is more like something that has been kind of like something consecrated. So you could say in one context, one is the quote unquote shadow of like Saturn is the shadow of the sun, but not literally though. So within saying that, you know, Saturn could have like in not good, not bad, like Saturn could have within Saturn's being of itself being a quote unquote shadow, end quote, it has its own oscillation and its own cyclical movements within itself, and how it retracts and how it generates that which it has its own like non-shadow, its own remnants of light self, its light self. And same with the sun. The sun, in there, I'm just trying to capture this particular yin and yang dynamic of the sun and Saturn, because that's what really the Matrix is in itself too, because the underground will explain it in like more details from once I explained it. But it's like, it's pretty much the Matrix in itself, because from that depth origin, something has been consecrated to be created and to be standpointed and stamped and identified for us to even have a forthcoming out of a matrix, Saturn. And that Saturn is quote unquote energetically opposed to the sun, and that has its own field dynamic generation system. And that field dynamic generation system, that's what's fueling the matrix in itself, is how in a different agreements and how that got aligned, and how that quote unquote future formula, end quote, because the future is the past, how that future formula even got put together to begin with is due to the fact that there was a different orchestrator and mediator, and how that code was what it was. But you could also ask, like, how did that get put together? But that's like a different that's a different thing. But like, so if the sun is opposed Saturn, and what Saturn is the matrix in itself, then the matrix is relying and dependent on some type of life energy, the sun. So the sun and Saturn, depending on all the aspects that are around that different context of that like fixed opposition, because you could say the sun and the Saturn in a different particular orbital context, they could have a fixed opposition, you know, because Saturn is quote unquote stationary within its own like collective orbit of things. It's more so stationary, it's more so grounded, and the sun could be in its own epicenter of it, you know, pointing to some type of just light consciousness energy bridge to like to how the sun is just kind of like an allegory to being light consciousness energy. But simultaneously, that's the paradox of the sun, it's simultaneously, it has a unique truth to it and a unique falsehood to it, because it's just consciousness being programmable. That's what the sun is. The sun is just programmable consciousness, respectively. And And then, it's like how all of this was allowed. We're all just like playing our parts pretty much. So within, like, even behind the scenes of that, behind the scenes of that, there's like a different there's a different quote unquote roundtable end quote that allowed this program to happen to be what it was. And for this program to be what it was, like, you could ask, why is there so much diversity? Why, like, what's up with all of this? Like, wow, this is like totally different from me. I'm this race, and this race looks totally different from me. Like, why is that even like allowed within this process? And everyone just playing their part. It's allowed because, I wrote a note here, so let me refer to the note. Where's the note at? Here it is. So I think it feels that long-term quote unquote beneficial mutation end quote is dependent on diversity in itself, because diversity in itself, it's the differentiation dynamic mechanic effect that influences and creates a particular type of genetic combustion, if you will. And within that genetic combustion, that mutation is celebrated, it's needed, so you could have prolonging genetic codes for whatever you are, for whatever gene pool you are. The diversity is thriving and welcoming the diversity gene pools, because that's how it's mutating for the better. But we don't want to, like, some people, for whatever faction, they don't want you to know that, because they're let's see, it's cool to write notes, huh? They're in their own unique standpoint of, just like, nah, I want it this way, nah, I want it that way, nah. It's because, like, that's what, like, that's what, like, what Saturn is in gate 37 right now. What does that mean? Honestly, like, without any of the human biases, what that really means is just like, do your job, but we don't necessarily know what our jobs are. Saturn in gate 37, what that's speaking to me is just do your job, but, like, we don't necessarily know what our job is. We don't want to recognize the other person because they didn't recognize us. That's how we're looking at it. Because all of us, we want to be recognized, but at the same time, it's not just that. We want to have it. We want to, like, like, we have our own unique spiritual biases based on how we were originated, and that's just the deepest truth of it. That's just the deepest truth of it. But, like, Saturn in gate 37, just do, but, like, we don't know what our job is. We don't, so there's confusion within what's going on. This gate of the family, right? It's like, the warden is like, just like, follow the family code, follow the family code. But, like, if there's no, like, harmony within the family code, then that family code is going to be like, kind of like, there's going to be like some, like, disalignment within there, so it's like, that's pretty much it. I mean, and obviously I could understand the people's critiques on me just kind of attempting to do this free flow. And I might not post this because but I probably will, because I just don't care, because I'm like, I did so much, like, this. I'm just kind of like, you know how there's like an ocean, and then there's, like, all these, like, random characters, and then, like, there's a big wave on an ocean, and there's just a bunch of, like, those floaty tubes. That's just what the day is to me. That's what, like, that's like, I'm just like, this is what the day has for me. And And for whatever reason, it's okay if we don't know like what our job is, but it's like and like eventually in the future, to bring more clarity here, is like I will connect the videos every time I say, oh, I'm talking about this video, oh, I'm talking about this video. In the future, I'm gonna like there's gonna be a chance to connect them, you know. That's for me to like take out the confusion here too. Yeah, but the gate of the family, it's like, you know, the matrix itself, you know, some be like behind Google respectively in a mature spiritual intelligence kind of way. The matrix itself is like looking at the family dynamic, and how the family dynamic has quote unquote no choice, end quote, to experience life and reality itself and accept genetic differentiation and genetic diversity. And some families have their own biases with their own level of accumulated conditioned mind states. Because what human design could be doing here, it's like it's giving us a chance, and if we do it right, you know, if we like lessen our mind, because just to bring it to some more ground here, what human design could be doing is it could be reducing and lessening and transforming the toxic mind that we have, the society mind that we have, and the miscellaneous nearby influence minds that we have. And it's the little baby possibility that is here for the potential of human design is to give that to the world, so the whole world could reduce the toxic mind within its nearby vicinities. The whole world could reduce the society mind of false conditioning within its nearby vicinities. The whole world could recognize just untruth and just miscellaneous detrimental mind influences, be it whatever. That's the potential of what, because like you could ask, what is the real potential of human design? That's what's going on here. And I'm saying that neutrally. I'm not trying to argue with any expert. I'm here as a student, hopefully as you are too. Thank you.